Writers Live presents Alka Joshi. My name is Christina Warnish. I'm the Adult Activities Coordinator for Palm Beach County Library System. Thank you all for being here today. As mentioned, this is part of our Writers Live series, which we are now in our 17th year of connecting readers and authors to its end. Unfortunately, the series is coming to a close with one last event on Wednesday. So we do have some flyers at the front table by the doors that lead out to lobby. If you're interested in picking up that flyer to attend the last one of this season, without ending. Because it's only January 3. Yeah. Until next year. I'd like to recognize the Friends of the Palm Beach County Library. Without their support, these events would not be possible. If you're interested in learning more about the Friends, I do have some brochures over here. If you're interested in either donating or becoming a friend, please feel free to take one on your way out today. I'd also like to thank our friends at Murder on the Beach, who is our local bookseller for today and supporters of libraries and library events. Sales directly benefit the local independent bookshop as well as the Friends of the Library, and copies of Alka's latest novel, 6 Days in Bombay, along with some of her previous novels, are available for purchase after the author talk for a book signing. And a little bit about our special guest. Alka Joshi is the internationally best-selling author of the Jaipur Trilogy, The Henna Artist, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and The Perfumist of Paris. Her debut novel, The Henna Artist, immediately became a New York Times bestseller, a Reese Witherspoon Book Club hit, an LA Times bestseller, a Toronto Star bestseller, and an indie bookstore's bestseller, a Cosmopolitan Best Audiobook, and an Amazon and Goodreads favorite. It was long listed for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and has been translated into 29 languages. It's currently in development as an episode series, and in 2023, Forbes selected Alka as one of 50 women over 50 who are shattering age and gender norms. Alka was born in India and came to the U.S. with her family at the age of 9. She has a BA from Stanford University and an MFA from California College of Arts. The fourth novel, 6 Days in Bombay, was released on April 15, 2025. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Alka Joshi.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you to the Hagen Branch Library. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I'm excited to show you a scene from 6 Days in Bombay that we enacted. So let's see if you remember it, if you already read them off.
Is that how you see me? Yes? If only you could see yourself the way I do. Which of the paintings do you prefer, sir? Miss Novak, they're stunning. 100.5, a little high. How's the pain? Tolerable. As long as I keep my mind off it.
How are you, Mira?
Did you know Sola is the most splendid house?
Really? I've increased your dosage a little, which should help. I'm concerned about the lingering pain, so obviously Dr. Holbrook.
You will see me before you leave tonight, right?
I make no promises, Mira.
Quite a catch, isn't he? I'll check back soon.
So I decided that in order to let people know about this book, I would do something a little different, and that is to bring 3 scenes from the book to life. And I worked with a female South Asian director-writer, a Chinese-American cinematographer, and a whole crew of 25 people who brought these things to life. So there are 2 more scenes, and you can see them on my Facebook or on my Instagram or my YouTube channel. I'm really proud of them because what they're trying to show is 2 very different personalities who are interacting in 6 days in Bombay. And I want to tell you about one of them. So in 1913 in Hungary, in Budapest, a young baby girl was born to an Indian scholar and creative dilettante. His name was Rumrao Singh, and he was married to Marie Antoinette, who was a Hungarian opera singer. And the 2 of them produced 2 little girls. The first of them was Amrita Sher Gill. Amrita was very precocious. She's the one on the right, and her sister is on the left. She was always wanting attention. She loved to dress up and have her father take photographs of them. She was always wanting to play and perform, and it was just a matter of time before she showed her talent as a painter. And her mother took her to schools, painting tutors in France, in Italy, in England, so that she could study, because she was from a wealthy family, and she and her sister wanted for nothing. They always went to private schools and had this wonderful upbringing. By the age of 16, Amrita was painting a lot, and when she didn't have a subject matter in school, she would paint her friends. On the your left is going to be Boris, and then she also painted a lot of self-portraits, sometimes with clothes and sometimes without. This is probably a good time for me to mention how promiscuous Amrita was. And just like, a lot of male artists whom you have heard about, she vetted anything that took her fancy. She was a great seductress, so men, women, whatever. And she kept doing that long after she married. But back in her study days, she was trying to imitate the greats and was very much influenced by these 3 painters. On your left is Modigliani. This is Amrita's version of Modigliani. And these are the elongated bodies and the elongated faces of this particular painter that she's trying to copy. And then in the middle, of course, you've seen Cézanne's apples and oranges, and this is her version of painting like Cézanne with his brushwork. And then on the very right is her self-portrait of herself being painted as a Gauguin's, one of his Tahitian women. And I'm sure you'll recognize those if you've seen a lot of Gauguin's work. So she's trying a lot of different things to find the style that she would like to go into the world with. And she did go into the world with this particular painting. So she painted this in 1932, and this is called Young Girls. So on the right is a friend of hers. She's sitting in the nude on the top half. Her sister Indra is in the painting also with a bowl of cherries. And this is a painting that won her a place in the French Salon, the Paris Salon, which was only a privilege granted to artists of a certain caliber. Many male artists did not make it in there, but she was the youngest artist at the age of 19 to do so. And got her a lot of recognition. People opened a lot of doors for her, and she exhibited quite a lot. She was as comfortable in India as she was in Europe because of her parentage. So with her father's family, they would often go to Shimla, they would go to different parts of India where the family was, and then with her mother's influence in Hungary. They would often go back to Hungary, where she and her sister were born, and various parts of France and Italy where they had friends. There was a moment, and you'll recognize this in the book, with our fictional character who portrays her, that her mother, her real-life mother, actually fell in love with one of the painting tutors and took Amrita and her sister Indra to Florence and to Venice to study with him, ostensibly to study with him. So, her mother had her own issues. but Amrita was just as comfortable in a beautiful sari, and she had lots of beautiful saris and lots of jewelry, and she loved red lipstick. So now you'll know why I'm fascinated by her. And then she was just as comfortable in 1930s, the latest Paris fashions, and also she still loved dressing up. And in Shimla, there was something called the Gaiety Theatre, which had been set up by the British when Shimla was the summer capital of the British. And she loved to have parts in the theater and play different Shakespearean roles. In her exhibitions, she was an exhibitionist in many different ways, and so you'll see a lot of her nudes of herself and of other of her models behind in this exhibition, and that is Amrita on the right, dancing. She was a party animal. She was I kind of compare her to somebody like a Picasso. She was that bold. She was that out there. She was involved in a lot of different kinds of things. In India, she always felt a little more comfortable in India with her paintings. And the reason was that she was making her mark with this avant-garde and impressionistic style that was so different from what was being done in India. In India, it was mainly about the court paintings, and then the sort of Bahari school of painting, which had gods and goddesses, very stylized and mythological. And here Amrita bursts on the Indian scene with her very large brushstrokes and her colors and her exuberance. In 1937, she actually moved to South India because she found that the life of the villagers and trying to portray their very humble lives and the lives of the women that she found so different from her sort of very wealthy upbringing. She wanted to portray that. She wanted to portray how difficult life was for the women there. She wanted to portray how little agency they had through her paintings, and she really felt that her paintings were the voice of these women. In 1938, she gets married because her mother is very adamant about her getting married. There are too many scandals afoot with Amrita sleeping with this person and that person, and they're in their social circles. Her mother, Marie Antoinette, is getting a little too concerned, and so she's begging Amrita to get married. Well, Amrita does, but as you could well imagine, with somebody who is so sort of bold and hard-headed, Amrita does exactly the opposite of what her mother really wants her to do, and she marries her Hungarian first cousin. There are many letters back and forth about her mother saying, how scandalous that was. That was even more scandalous than anything else that she'd been doing. But Amrita didn't care. She just didn't care what other people thought. And I think this is part of my fascination with her. Because how many of us can say that we don't, it doesn't matter to us what somebody thinks of us. I mean, I care too much, right? And so, it is refreshing to find somebody who is just willing for everybody to take them on their own terms. And that's the person that she was. And she kept painting. Even after marriage, she just kept painting. She painted with these kind of very soft colors, somber colors, but she used a lot of red in her painting. She used a lot of red in not only the clothing, but also in the colors that she was painting the women. And you know, at this time, apart from Gauguin, a lot of people were not painting somebody who was brown, but Amrita was definitely doing that.
Yeah.
In 1941, Amrita was 28 years old. She had done all of this and left behind something like 170 paintings when she died.
Yeah. Oh,
But in 1941, she was complaining of gastric distress. She didn't go to the hospital right away. Her husband took her to the hospital finally, and after a few hours, Amrita slipped into a coma, and after 2 days, she was pronounced dead. She never woke up. So my theory is that had Amrita lived beyond the age of 28, I think we would know her name. We would all know her name as easily as we know Frida Kahlo's name, or Georgia O'Keeffe, or Mary Cassatt. You know, so many female painters who have been forgotten by the roadside. I was thinking, why? You know, why are women like her sometimes forgotten? Not only was her painting, I think, really masterful at such a young age, but she was also such a personality. How could you forget this personality? Well, I found out through my research that there are many reasons why female artists often were forgotten. One of them was that sometimes the men would just override them. They were well known. You know, there was this kind of natural patriarchy going on. And so the gallerists would ask the men to do exhibitions instead of the female artists. And sometimes when the male artists felt a little threatened, they would spread sexual misinformation. So, you know, this person, this woman is sleeping with that person and, you know, doing all of these kinds of, you know, horrible things. Well, in Amrita's case, I don't think that was a problem because she didn't seem to care whether anybody made up misinformation about her sexually. But many of the artists came from poor families, and you'll know this when you read The Perfumist of Paris, and I know many of you have. And in The Perfumist of Paris, we learn about Victorine Meurent, who was the model for Manet's painting Olympia, which features very prominently in the novel. And Victorine actually was a better artist and more famous before Manet ever became famous. And Victorine had her work, you know, selected for exhibitions before. But Victorine was poor, and so she needed to model in order to pay her fees and in order to pay for paint and brushes and things like that. So she, aside from painting, also had to serve as models for many, many, many painters. The painters like Renoir and Manet and Monet were wealthy, so they could spend all day painting. They could spend all day at their chateaus not painting, whatever it is they wanted to do. And Victorine didn't have that kind of luxury. So there were many women who did not, you know, make it into the limelight because they were poor or they were slaves. And in many African American artists were forgotten because they were slaves. That wasn't a problem for Amrita either, because she was very wealthy. And then the very last thing that people would say about a female artist is, oh, she couldn't possibly have painted all of this. You know, a man must have helped her get there. So, or a man must have done that for her. So I have a bachelor's in art history. I have gone everywhere all over the world and been to museums and studied all these different artists, and yet I had never heard of her. So when I was researching the henna artist and I came across this name, I thought, someday I want to write about this woman. Now, I don't want to write a biography. That's not what I'm interested in doing. I would like to fictionalize her life so that maybe I can speculate about how she died. There has never been a clear-cut answer about how she ended up at the hospital and about why she died so suddenly. And so I thought, well, you know, I could put that little imagination to work and maybe find an answer to this question. I wanted to also look at her from a third person perspective. I wanted to look at her the way I was looking at Amrita. You know, I'm very admiring of her. I'm admiring of her age and her accomplishment, and also that free spirit that she had. But sometimes when we look at people and we've already put them on a pedestal, I think that it's interesting to find out the person behind that curtain and to see if there was something more there that we couldn't explain easily, and that maybe it helps us understand that person in a way that kind of takes them off the pedestal a little bit. We may still admire them, but I think that it's more of a realistic idea of who they are. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do in 6 Days in Bombay. So then the two characters of 6 Days in Bombay become not only the painter, whom I named Meera in the book, but also then the nurse who is taking care of her, Sona. And I thought, how could the two of these women bond together? And maybe it will be those last few days at a hospital where the teacher will get to know this nurse. Then I thought, okay, Amrita spent 2 days in the hospital. And so I thought, is that enough time for the nurse to bond with her? I thought, no, 2 days is not enough time. Maybe 3 days. And then I thought, no, that's not enough time either. How about 4 days, 5 days, 6 days? Okay, that seems about right. So this is how 6 Days in Bombay came about. And by the way, I'm a horrible titler. I do not title my books. I don't title them. So it is the sales department that came up with this title, and that's why it is called 6 Days in Bombay. I would have just called it The Painter because with the taxonomy that they've been going with so far is the henna artist, the secret keeper of Jaipur, and the perfumist of Paris. So I thought they'll just call this one The Painter, I'm sure. The reason I don't title my books is because of the very first book. I wanted to call it Enemy of the Crocodile. And my editor said, what? And I said, well, yeah, because there's a proverb in the book. And I have so many proverbs in my books because that's the way in those time periods that a lot of people spoke. They spoke in proverbs to give you, the essence of what they were trying to say. And there's a proverb that goes, only a fool remains in the water and stays an enemy of the crocodile. And Lakshmi is no fool, and she does not want to become an enemy of Parvati, who is really the crocodile in the henna artist. And so my editor looked at me and said, yeah, are you going to be there for every single person who is going to check out that book and explain your title to them? I said, no. They said, how about if we just call it The Henna Artist? Is that okay with you? So I said, okay. So anyway, they title all of my books, and I think 6 Days in Bombay is a great title for it because these are the seminal days in which the painter and the nurse get to know each other. And yes, this is a very young Emma Thompson. So what happened is one of the things I do when I prepare to write is I look for the images online of the characters that I have in my head in my story. And as I start looking, I am looking for a certain feeling that I get from that person. We already know what Amrita looked like, so I can describe Meera, the painter in the book, exactly how Amrita is. But with the nurse, I found this picture and I thought, oh yeah, she's kind of got that gravitas that Emma Thompson does, and she's got that kind of quietness that Emma Thompson does. So, and I just happened to find a picture of her with a nurse's cap on. So when you read Sona, think of her as a young Emma Thompson, because that's how I was thinking of her the whole time. Now, both these women, one of the reasons that they bond is that they are both in their 20s. The young painter is about to die, who is in her late 20s, and the young nurse is only 26. And they also bond because they have a dual identity. The painter is half Indian and half Czech. So Czechoslovakia at that time was actually called Bohemia in the 1930s, and the nurse is half Indian and half British. So she is what's called an Anglo-Indian. And there, 300 years prior, the British East India Company had encouraged alliances between their British employees, their male employees, and the Indian women. And the reason for that is because the men had come without wives. The journey was really treacherous on the seas. It would take months and months, and a lot of the English women did not come with their husbands. So the men were alone and needed companionship, but also the British thought that this would be a great way for them to build a bridge between the two cultures, and then to have offspring that would understand both languages. And ultimately, they could employ the offspring in their administrations, in their nursing staffs, wherever it is that they might need the translation. So Sona is the result of one of those alliances. Three things happened with those kinds of Anglo-Indian families. One is that the British father took the family back to England with them. The second is that the British man decided to stay in India with his family and just live out the rest of his life that way. And the third was that the British gentleman went back to England to his first family and left the Indian family back home. And so Sona is a result of the latter. So she has a lot of misgivings about her dual parentage because her father abandoned them when she was only 3 years old and went back to England. She doesn't know where, when, she hasn't been in touch with him ever since. But she looks at the painter, who is very comfortable with her dual identity. She doesn't mind being, Indian 1 minute with her sari and European the next. So Sona is looking at Mira the way I'm looking at the painter, which is, somebody who is so comfortable in their skin. How does that happen? And also somebody who is so, so esteemed and has accomplished so much in her young life. So when the painter dies, she leaves 4 paintings, unbeknownst to the nurse. Unbeknownst to Sona, Mira leaves her 4 paintings with a cryptic note that indicates that Sona should travel to Prague and Florence and Paris in order to deliver these paintings to Mira's former friends and lovers. She has no addresses. Sona has no addresses, so she has to figure out from things that the painter told her. She has to figure out how she is going to be able to find these people in all the different cities that she's going to go in. Now, like most young Indian women of that period, she has never traveled abroad. She has no idea how to make things happen. So now I have to figure out, how would a 26-year-old travel abroad in 1937? I decided, instead of waiting until 1941, which is when the real painter died, I decided to set the novel in 1937 because I didn't want either World War I or World War II to steal from, her story. So in 1937, the RMS Viceroy was a big steamship that used to take passengers from India, from Bombay, up to Europe. And or up to points, it could go all the way around the long way and get to Europe, or you could take it up through the Suez Canal and into Istanbul. And then from Istanbul, you would take the various Orient Expresses. The steamship had tennis courts, it had an indoor pool, it had cigar rooms for the men, it had many different ballrooms, so it was a really fancy kind of place. And how Sona could afford to be on a steamship like that to make it to Europe, I will leave it up to you to find out as you read the book. And then this is, I would sort of picture Sona sitting there on one of the Orient Expresses. Now, I love Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, and I love the book and I love the movie. And so I thought that there was only one Orient Express, but it turns out there were about 6 of them, and some of them still run. But so Sona is on the Arlberg Orient Express, which goes from Istanbul to Prague, and then she'll land in Prague first. So how do I find my information about all of these places? I read a lot of material. I read literature from the time period, from the 1930s. I look at photo archives from the 1930s, and I actually go to the settings. It's a hardship. It's such a hardship to get on a plane and just, go to Paris and go to Prague but I had to do it. Before I go, I do a lot of research to figure out whom I should talk to. And what I'm looking for are academicians. I'm looking for interwar scholars. I was looking for art historians, and I was looking for archivists. And I find them ahead of time. I make appointments with them even before I get to someplace, and that way they're expecting me and they can walk me around or show me whatever it is they need to show me. I found Martina in Prague, and Prague is a beautiful city if you haven't been. It is like a really clean Paris. Lots of outdoor cafes, it's gorgeous. I was first there in 1978 when it was communist, and it was a whole different feeling. And now it's just like, really come to life, it's gorgeous. So Martina took me around to old exhibitions of 1930s posters. She took me to a lot of different places that she thought my protagonist would have had a hot chocolate, would have maybe gone and gotten her bread. So there's lots of little things that I can only find out once I'm actually on the ground that I can't find out through a book. And it makes you, the reader, feel like you're actually there. So I hope that, when you've read my other books, you actually feel like you're in Jaipur, you feel like you're in Agra, you feel like you're in Paris. In the middle is Samuele, whom I found in Florence, and he actually teaches at the University of Milan, but he took a train down to take me through Florence because he knows a lot about the history there as well. And he told me something very interesting about Ferragamo, which I'm going to share with you later. And then the very last one, this is Ermelinda Campani. Oh my God, I love her Italian accent. And she is the director of the Stanford in Florence program, which I attended as a junior, and she is now the director of that program. She told me a lot about Mussolini. Her grandfather was supporting Mussolini in the beginning, as were so many people. And it was interesting to hear from her the perspective of the people who were. They were very poor. People wanted a lot of, they just wanted food, they wanted comfort, they wanted schooling, they wanted all these things that they didn't have. Italy was not doing well when he came on the scene, and he promised them everything. And so they fell for it and said, yes, we're going to elect you. But people did become disillusioned after about a year or two and realized that he was promising things he couldn't deliver. But it was interesting to hear from a really personal perspective why her family would have supported Mussolini in the 1930s. Okay, then what happens is as I'm going through these places, as I'm reading things, I am making notes. I have tons of libraries where I'm making lots and lots and lots of notes. And then when I go through those notebooks, I highlight all the things that I think are really key and that I would like to put in my book. What I find interesting about that is these little gems will pop out when I'm reading the list of the things that I gleaned from all of my research. And they just like pop out and I go, okay, I have to include that, I have to include this. So I'm going to share with you 3 different things that I really felt like I had to include it there in the book. In Prague, I went to the Pinka synagogue, and 70,000 Jews were sent to concentration camps from Prague. But they had lived in perfect harmony with the Czechs. And the Czechs, as opposed to the German Czechs, were very much, okay with the Jewish people. They had lived with them for, hundreds of years. But then when the German Czechs came along and there was something signed called the Munich Agreement, everything went toward the Nazis and the Jews were sent to camps. One of the things that you see when you enter the synagogue is you see entire walls, floor to ceiling, filled with names of people who disappeared. And also the addresses, their last known address before they disappeared. Amazing. And my husband and I were walking through this synagogue and we just burst into tears. It was just so disheartening to think, you know, what we people can do to one another. We human beings can be so incredibly cruel. But then there was this little bright spot up on the second floor where there were these little drawings by children. You can tell that these are children's drawings. There's some behind them and more over there. And what I learned was there was a young woman who was sent to the camps, and she didn't have any children, but she saw how tortured the children were, and you know, what an awful time they were having. So she scrounged for paper, pencils, chalk, whatever she could find, and she had them drawing all day long, drawing happier times, drawing a birthday event, drawing their grandparents, drawing time on the playground together. And in so doing, you know, brought some joy into their lives. Now, none of these people survived, but I thought, you know, this is something, I have to imbue one of my characters with this sort of heroine personality, who was able to be brave at a time when, you know, none of us thought they could be brave. In Paris, in 1937, there was the World Expo in Paris, and this is the event for which Picasso painted Guernica. So this is how large Guernica is, if you ever see it in reality. I wanted to show it to you with the people in front so you could see it. And this was an artist's way of protesting what was happening with fascism and Nazism at the time, because they had both collaborated to bomb an area of Catalonia. And Picasso was very much painting this in protest, showing what happens during war. You have, you know, parts of animals and parts of human beings, you know, in pain. And I don't think after he painted this, I don't think he ever went back to Spain again. But he was protesting Franco. Okay, here's the Ferragamo thing. This is really fun because Mussolini says to the Italians, hey guys, if you're producing anything that is not, that has a part or something that is not made in Italy, then you need to find some way to substitute it. And what did Ferragamo use in his stilettos? But steel. Steel was not made in Italy. It had to be imported. So Ferragamo got to work, and he had to experiment with a lot of different ways to shore up those heels that he liked to make on women's shoes. And he found cork. So he developed the cork wedge heel, and these became the standard things that are worn. If you ever see a 1940s movie, you'll see a lot of the movie stars are wearing this kind of heel with a little open toe out at the front. And this was, you know, his own brainchild. Of course, with the name Ferragamo, which was already famous throughout the world. They became huge successes, and pretty soon all the actresses in Hollywood were wearing them. This particular pair was made for specially for the Maharani of Coach Behar. And okay, so we read the henna artist. That Maharani was the mother of the young Maharani in the henna artist. So in the woman I used as a model for that younger Maharani was the daughter of this particular woman who really was very stylish and only wore brand clothes. The heels have pearls and rubies and emeralds in them. And yes, they look like every pair of shoes I have in my closet. Okay, so I showed you what I did for marketing in trying to get the scenes to come to life. And you know, what I think is really important is to always show women's agency, how they can become empowered even during tough times. And I like to show examples of that using real women whom I use as my models for the characters that I create. And I, you know, like to hire females to be my contractors at home. I like to hire female electricians. And with this, I was really adamant about working only with a female crew to bring these scenes to life. So, if we're going to talk about women's agency, we kind of have to live in that space too, and we have to put our money where our mouth is. So this was a really fun project for me. I think the last thing I want to tell you is that what I found really revealing in the 6 days in Bombay, and I think it's a lesson I keep learning all the time, we have so many pieces of us, and sometimes we show one piece to one person, another piece to another person, if people are lucky enough to know all the pieces of us, it's because they've known us for a long time, or possibly because they've been sent on a mission, like Mira the painter sent Sona on a mission. And in a way, what she did was to empower Sona to be adventurous, to have courage, to realize that she could go abroad, that she could manage to travel by herself and to find all these people by herself. It was an incredible opportunity for Sona to come into her own. And I think in the way that Mira, the character, empowered Sona, I think that Amrita, the painter, empowered me to write a story about her. And Sona, at the end of her journey, actually has an idea of what might have happened to the painter and how she died. So it was also empowering me to sort of present an idea to the world about what might have happened. And by the way, Marie Antoinette, Amrita's mother, always blamed the husband, whom she never liked, for killing her only daughter. So that was one supposition, that was one explanation for his death. Another explanation was a miscarriage and it developed into sepsis. And a third explanation was maybe it was a botched, abortion of some kind. Because Amrita did get pregnant several times while she was courting around the people, and, her husband helped her get some of those abortions. So, anyway, there's so many different pieces of us, and maybe the more we find out, like the more I found out about Amrita, I still admire her, but now I have more of a full picture of the person she was, and maybe why she was the person that she became. So I really hope that you guys are going to love this journey that you're on, and that maybe Amrita Shergill will become a name well known to you in the same way that you might know other female painters. And I think I'm going to end right there, but I want you guys to ask me any questions that you would like. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I drove 4 hours to get here today. Because I love your writing. I had even sent you an email after I finished The Perfumist. I mean, your writing is so heartfelt, and you are such a storyteller that you engage my heart tremendously. So I'm so looking forward to reading this one. But I want to ask, so where are her artworks now?
Oh, okay. So in 2019, I went to New Delhi with my brother, who is here in the back row. Raise your hand. And if you think I have light eyes, you should look at his eyes too. Both of us inherited light eyes from our mother. But we went to New Delhi, and I went to the National Gallery of Modern Art there, where many of her paintings are exhibited, about 19 of them. It was a great opportunity for me to see firsthand how large scale the paintings are, and sort of, I would stand in front of each one of them to see what kind of feeling I got from them. They were just phenomenal. So that is partly, many of them are in private collections, so in private homes, and some of them are with family members. Amrita is now considered like a national treasure. So her artwork is not allowed to leave the country. which is a shame because I think we might know her work better if it came to the Getty or if it came to a museum here and there was a full exhibition, you know, of her work or something. But I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on that. All right, somebody else had a question? Yes. Hi. Okay.
Yes, I also enjoy all of your books, and I enjoy your writing style. Who do you read? Like, what are your favorite authors?
Oh, I have so many. I have so many favorite authors. You know, strangely enough, Larry McMurtry is one of my favorite authors. I think he really gets women. I like Ann Tyler. I like Ruth Crowder Jamvala. Who is now, you know, gone, unfortunately, but she wrote a lot about India in the 1950s and 60s because she spent 30 years there in New Delhi. And she was actually a German woman who met her Indian husband in London and then went back with him where he was an architect in New Delhi and spent the rest of her, most of her life there. Then she became a screenplay writer and did all of the work for Merchant Ivory, and she wrote Howard's End, and she wrote, what was another fabulous one? I don't know, I'm not gonna be able to think of it right now, but she wrote a whole bunch of screenplays for Howard's End of films that you guys all see. And then Kay Gibbons, I don't know if you've ever read Kay Gibbons, is really phenomenal. And I recently just read a wonderful book by Claire Keegan called Small Things Like These. Oh my God, such a lovely book. I like books that take me to a different country, that take me to a different, you know, setting or environment that I would not normally understand, rather than something that I am familiar with. And I think that one was such a great morality tale in the sense that when you're confronted with something you know is wrong, how much courage would it take you to stand up and say, no, I won't follow that path, I'll follow another path. And you know what? It's a hard question to answer sometimes. Yes.
How do you feel about Tuesday Underdog?
Are you thinking about Oh, okay. Thriti Umrigar. Yeah, no, I love her. I love some of her books. Yes, definitely. I should have mentioned her as well.
Different aspect. She shows more of the negative than you do.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things, okay, so I'll tell you why I focus on the positive parts of India, or why I want to focus on things that you may never have heard of before. When I was 9 years old and we first came to this country, I had this interesting thing going on. Everybody at school didn't really, you know, this was 1967 and it was Ames, Iowa. And we had come from India. And so what I kept hearing are things like, oh, where do you get your tan? And that was the first time I even understood that people actually sit out in the sun to get a little darker. Because my mother was always telling me, get out of the sun, you'll get darker, get out of the sun. They would ask if India was anywhere close to Texas. They would ask if, nobody wants to sit next to me on the bus because I smell like curry, because people didn't understand what curry was, right? And it's a strong, smell. And so in the textbooks at school, all the photos were about poverty in India, about nothing else other than poverty. And I just thought, well, I don't want to be associated with a country like that. I came from a place where, we are middle class, where, we had everything we would want. We went to English-speaking schools. And suddenly I come to a country where people only understand the poverty in India or only know about certain aspects of India. And as a kid, I just wanted to fit in. I don't want to be different from everybody else. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be Indian anymore. I'm just going to be American. So, we came home, we told Mom, look, we're just going to have hamburgers and hot dogs and spaghetti and meatballs like they serve at school. We just want to be American. And we're going to dress like Americans and talk American and all of that. And so my mom was bewildered, I know she was, and she was a vegetarian, so she had to learn how to cook all this stuff. And the first thing that she cooked was hamburger, and she didn't really know how to cook a hamburger, right? And so she got ground beef, she went to the store, got ground beef, and then she made these balls of ground beef, and then she, sauteed them on the stove, and she put them between two pieces of Wonder Bread, and it soaks right through, right? And so we're looking at this, and she serves us, and we take a bite of the hamburger, and it is raw on the inside because she didn't realize you have to flatten those patties. And so, I think Dad took pity on us and said, okay, you know what, let's all go to McDonald's. So everybody liked McDonald's. So we, for 36 years after that, 40 years after that, I did not go back to India. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to acknowledge that I was Indian. But then in 2008, I was running my own agency and my marketing agency and advertising agency. And the 2008 recession came along, and at that point I just thought, okay, well maybe I need to switch gears because clients are telling me that they are going to have to put projects on hold, or they're going to have to cancel them altogether. What am I going to do with myself for 2 years, twiddle my thumbs while the economy recovers? No, let me see what else I can do. And my husband, who had recognized something in me that told him that I could tell stories, he said, honey, I think you could write fiction if you wanted to. You could write these stories about India that you keep telling me. And I would say, no, I'm a hack. I write advertising, I write marketing, I write PR. I'm not literary. And he would say, yeah, I think you are. So then I would start taking classes and this master's program. It was a very intensive 2-year program. And I thought, just enough time for the economy to recover and my clients will call me back. And during that period, my brother Piyush had made a condo available in Jaipur for us that he had bought. And he said, you guys, you can come here anytime and stay here as long as you want, whatever it is you want to do. So Mom and I would go there, and we would stay for long periods of time because I had those semester breaks and summer breaks and everything. And then Mom just started to tell me all about India. She started to tell me about her India, about growing up in India. And she took me to sari bazaars and jewelry bazaars. And in jewelry bazaars, she took me into the back room where Motilal, the jeweler, takes you, and the secret keeper of Jaipur. That's how I learned that there is this secret little room where they take people, their best clients. And so, I started realizing how much my mother loved India and how she never actually wanted to come to the United States. That was my dad's dream because he wanted to get a doctorate in civil engineering and at Iowa State University. And so, I just thought, okay, what can I learn from this experience? And my mother told me a little bit about her life as a young woman. She was going to college, she was studying, and she wanted to become a psychologist. She wanted to become a psychology major. And her father said, no, you have to come home. We have found the perfect partner for you, and you're going to be married in a month. And so Mom came home, and she met my father, in a formal setting. And my father was a young engineer, and so he was the kind of person my grandfather wanted in the family because engineers were helping rebuild India in 1950s. And so having an engineer in the family is like having a doctor in the family today. And they got married, and they had 3 kids in 4 years, and my mother just never really had agency in her life. She didn't have a voice. She was the person that we all depended on, but it wasn't like she had power in the family. And so I think that knowing that, I thought, well, how remarkable that she's raised me to have so much power in my life. And I really think I'm her rebellion. So I think that with me, she was always saying, you're going to get to do all the things you want to do. You will study whatever it is you want. Just make sure that whatever it is you study in college, you are going to be able to support yourself because you've got to be able to have your own income before you depend on somebody else with their income. She said, decide whom you want to marry. I'm not going to get in your way of that. And, figure out things for yourself, because this is how a woman in the world should be. And I just thought, wow. I said, Mom, how did you make all of that happen for me? And she said, I had to fight with your dad a lot. So behind the scenes, I had no idea that she was actually making him do exactly the opposite of what he wanted to do, and allowing me to have freedom. So I thought, I really need to pay tribute to this woman. This is an amazing thing. And I thought, what if I could just change my mother's life? Well, in reality, I can't, right? I can't give her the life that I've had. But what I can do is, in fiction, I can create a character like Lakshmi, who leaves her marriage, keeps herself child-free on purpose, and decides to forge a life for herself as a henna artist and an herbal healer. And those two things are something that I think my mother could have done without any education beyond the 12th grade. And so that is how the henna artist came about. And I said, Mom, I am making this as a tribute to you. And she goes, oh, that's nice, honey. She just had no idea what it would become, and it just became this, much bigger thing. But shortly after I finished the program, and clients did start calling me back and wanted to have marketing projects done, my mother died about 8 months after I completed the program, and then I gave up on the novel completely. And then one of my mentors, called me and said, Alka, what are you doing with your book? And I told her about Mom, and she said, you really should get back to work on it, because, we think that you might have a really good chance of getting that published. You're a good writer. So I said, okay, so will you work with me? She worked with me for the next couple of years. She sent it off to her agent, and her agent called back and said, oh, I love this book. I love this character. Oh my gosh, the Lakshmi is fabulous. I want to work with you on this. And I said, hallelujah, I'm going to get published. Oh my God, I never even had to look for an agent. And she said, no, you're not getting published. No, that is far down the line. You have a lot of work to do on this book. And so for the next 6 years, I would go back and forth with Emma, my agent, on different versions, because she wanted to cut this out and cut that out and redo this and work on that. And then she had me go to independent editors and had me look at all of those books with them. And then, they would read my work, the independent editors, and they would say, yeah, love this character and love this story, but, really, you have 12 pages of work here that I would like to suggest. And then, another editor might say, here's 18 pages of suggestions that I think you might want to follow. And I just said, okay, this is too much. I'm not doing this anymore. So I gave up. I gave up for the second time. And that time I stayed away for like a whole year. I didn't do anything with the novel. I really didn't think I was ever going to go back to it. And I was busy working full time anyway. So then finally, I ran across the novel. I ran across these big fat pages. And I just thought, if I don't do something with this, if I don't look at those comments again that those editors sent me and try to make some of those edits, then nobody gets to hear this alternate life, and I think my mother could have lived. So I started to work on it again, and after a year, I sent it all back to my agent, Emma. I said, Emma, it's been 9 years since I first started working on this novel, and I would really like you to send it off to a publisher. She did, and then we got the contract with HarperCollins, and for some reason I just knew that I could write full-time now. It was like a validation. And so I hung up my shingles for marketing and advertising and gave away my work that I had to other people, and I just decided I was going to write full-time. So excited, and then I have a new editor at HarperCollins who's going to work with me on the henna artist. She has a major change that she wants to make. It's never over. And so then I start making those changes, and then she sends it off to the printer. And that process is a 6-month process. And then at the end of 6 months, I'm supposed to have a book in bookstores and libraries, a real physical book. But during those 6 months, I started working on 6 Days in Bombay because I wanted to write about this painter. But Malik, from the henna artist, is so much in my head. He is not going to leave me alone, and he wants me to write his story. And in a sort of a loose way, inspired by my younger brother right there, who is very entrepreneurial, and so is Malik. And so Malik, his story comes really easily. I write 20 pages of it. My agent says, hey, this is great, we're going to send it off. She sent it off to the publisher. The publisher then decides that she's going to give me a second book contract. So I get a second book contract before the henna artist was even in the stores. Not in any libraries, not in any bookstores. And then when my release date for the henna artist actually does come up, the pandemic strikes. So my release date was March the 10th, 2020. And so all of my events were canceled. I didn't get to speak to people like I'm speaking to you guys right now. And I thought, oh my God, all is lost. I just spent 10.5 years on a book that nobody will ever get to see. But people did, and it was a lovely thing that people reached out on social media when I asked them to, and book clubs, like a lot of the ones that you guys belong to, reached out and said, will you talk to us? So I started talking to book clubs, and to date I've done more than 900 book clubs on Zoom. Wow. Yeah, I would do, remember how we were all just locked in our homes? And so for me, this was a great opportunity to talk to people all over the world. I would be doing a Zoom at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock at night, sometimes even at midnight, just depending on where they were from. What part of the country they were. And it was a great opportunity for me to get to meet with a lot of people everywhere. And then came the phone call from Reese's people, and they said, oh, we love the book, and Reese is going to name this book as one of her book picks for 2020. And then just everything blew through the roof after that. So I will forever be grateful to Reese Witherspoon for championing female authors, because that is her charter. Her charter is to champion female authors, and she does a fantastic job of that. So she sort of elevated our level to the point where we are able to compete money-wise and promotion-wise with male authors, which is really wonderful. So I'm sorry that was a long answer to your question.
Interesting.
Did you get?
Absolutely. The membership can say that he did aspiration.
Oh, thank you.
They very inspired by you. I was all about stuff in London, and the ladies all love us.
Oh.
All that, and particularly if you like
Well, you have to get up and thank my brother then. Yes, thank you. So that comment was just that, her book club really loves these books, and that, yes, honoring your mother, I think, is a really important thing to do. I think a lot of times we look at our mothers, I know I did for the longest time, she was just my mom. But then I got to know her on this level where she was a person. She had a life way before I came along, and the more I learn about that life, the better. If you guys have any older people in your life that you have not spoken to on that level, please write down their histories, write down what they tell you, because I think it's so important to connect. These people, once they go, their intelligence, their memories go with them. And I think it's so important to get these little tidbits of ways that they were raised, or like herbal remedies that they learned about that you may not know anything about. Just anything, just little tips for growing up and being a confident woman in this world. I think it would be really a remarkable thing to do. I love that idea. Yes.
May I talk
Yes.
one more time? I did address this in an email that I sent to you, but now you reminded me, and I do have a big bone to pick with you. I am still upset or disappointed or whatever that we didn't get to hear more about the relationship between Lakshmi and who she married, the doctor.
Oh, well, but you read The Secret Keeper of Jaipur.
Yes, I did, but it was like 1 minute they're, eyeing each other, or he was eyeing her, and then they're married.
And then
I wanted to hear about the courtship.
Oh, okay. You know what? Then I may write about that. I think that would be fun. So when I first started calling the first 3 books a trilogy, my editor said, "Stop doing that. You're making people feel like you'll never go back to them again." And so I thought, oh gosh, maybe I have, put myself in a little, jam here. But then I was talking to a book club, and the book club said to me, "Oh, Alka, don't worry about it. Star Wars has a billion prequels, and they have a billion sequels. She said, you could do that, no problem." So, and by the way, while I'm on the subject of book clubs, if you have a book club and you want me to talk to you about any of my books, please call me. Please write to me. You can always get to my email by going to my website. It's just alkajoshi.com. It's just my name. So go there, and there's a contact information. I answer every single email. And if you've ever written to me, you know that. So please don't think that it's going to go into some black hole. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you.
I have to.
Yes.
I just found all of your herbal remedies just fascinating. And for women, for their cures, and abortions and everything was just like, it was just the little sachet package that, oh my gosh, like that was like, I didn't even know that was a thing then, right? It was like that women had to address that, of course. I mean, it makes sense. And then in the perfumist of Paris, I took snapshots of all of the flowers and the scents, and it was such a science. It was
Okay.
so interesting.
Okay, so I'll tell you about that. All comes from research. So one of the things I did in the henna artist is I thought about what my mother could do for a living, and I knew that every Indian woman, and I was a little kid in India thinking, "Oh, Mom, I want to have my hands henna just like yours." And so every woman knows about henna, and I thought, well, if you have a modicum of artistic talent, you could probably do henna as well. And then the other thing, I thought, but that's not enough of an income. How could she build a house based on that? Oh, I know. She could probably use the remedies that are so prevalent in India and in South Asian households. They all have their own home remedies, as I'm sure your families did at one point. And so I thought, okay, how would she learn that? Oh, what if she had somebody teaching her? Not her own mother, but what if it's the mother that she's been staying with, which is really her husband's mother? And so I thought, oh, that's where that relationship came in, why they were in such good, symbiotic relationship with a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law kind of thing. And I thought that also helped me break that stereotype of the hated mother-in-law, because I can't stand that stereotype. It drives me nuts. I have a lovely mother-in-law. And so that's kind of where a lot of that came from. Then I started thinking, okay, so what kind of herb would really make sure that she could have money? Oh, what if it's an herb that keeps women who don't want to be pregnant from becoming pregnant? And that would be the courtesans, right? Courtesans depend on their livelihood and with their bodies, and so they can't afford to be pregnant. And then I thought, okay, so what were women doing to prevent pregnancy? Oh my goodness, I found so much stuff. For thousands of years, women have employed all kinds of remedies, and many of them have had to do with teas that they made out of bitter roots or, some kind of plant that you would never ordinarily eat. Helen of Troy used some kind of an herb in order to rid herself of babies. So that's how that came about. And then the research for the perfumist of Paris, of course, another one of my hardships, I have to go to Paris to find out about how they make perfume. So I met with people in small boutique shops. I met with master perfumers in large boutique shops. I went to perfume labs in Paris. I went to perfume labs in New York City. I just got a wealth of information, and people were so generous of their time. They would show me how they actually mixed the formulas. And then they said, you have to go to Grasse down in southeastern France, so I did that. And I met with factories where they compound and bottle perfume. And then I went to Grasse, where I was told, I went to Lisbon, where I was told about an 87-year-old gentleman who was in Paris in 1974, at the time that Rada is in Paris in 1974, in the Perfumist of Paris. So I got a chance to hear from him exactly, who were the kind of people that he worked with, were there any women in the profession, what were women treated like in that profession. So got a lot of great information from him. And he would not talk to me until he had read my first 2 books, because he wanted to know if I was a serious person. And so I said, no, I'll have the publisher send those 2 books to you. He said, no, that is okay, I will read it myself. Because I think he didn't want to be beholden to me in case he hated the books. Well, like a month later, I get an email from him saying, okay, I will talk to you. Because he had read the books. And I was so charmed. I said, well, thank you. I said, I am so delighted by you and also the information that you have given to me and the personal interview that he gave me in Lisbon, that I said I would like to name Radha's company after you. So that's why Radha's company is called the House of Eve. So, these little things, like real things in my research, make their way completely into the book. And I think that fiction is one of the best ways to impart historical information. I mean, in history classes, things were so boring, right? It was all about dates and wars. But what about the people? And that's what I feel historical fiction does, is it gives you context for the people living through a particular historical time. And that I love that. My favorite authors are the historical fiction authors. I love them so much. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
I'm sorry I was late, so I didn't have the beginning. And I don't know if anybody mentioned that you're in the Wall Street Journal this Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so glad you brought a copy.
It's for you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I am in the Wall Street Journal, and then thank you. This is one of my ardent supporters of all books and book clubs. I think you had me in how many book clubs? 3? It's amazing. And also, I was in on Morning Joe. Did anybody see me on Morning Joe last Monday? Oh, that was really an amazing thing. And once again, Mika Brzezinski, who is a co-host of Morning Joe. Hey, Christina, do you think we could run that clip? Mika Brzezinski is a huge supporter of women, and she's the one who started the 50 over 50 initiative. And she said, I'm over 50, I don't want to be forgotten. Why do women get forgotten after a certain age? We have so much to contribute, we have knowledge, we've done amazing things, we should be able to share them with everybody. And so she started this 50 over 50 with Forbes, and so then Forbes, the very first year, which was 2 years ago, they called 10,000 names. I get this email from Forbes. Alka, you are one of 10,000 people that we have, vetted, and we would like to invite you, to be on our list. And I was like, okay, this is a scam, and I deleted it. And then I heard from my publicist, who forwarded that same email to me a month later, and said, Alka, they're waiting for your answer. And I was like, oh my God. And there was a little form I had to fill out, so I filled out the form. And then I was like, oh my God, how do I make it on a list where we've got women who have started companies, women who have done these extraordinary things? And so they said, well, we need creative people too. And creative people like you with all your gray hair, you're showing people that we're not dead after 50. So here we go. Thank you. Take the chance, take the leap, do the thing that you are so afraid to do, because I swear to you, it is not as scary on the other side as you think it's going to be. You will not fall as far as you think you will. So take the leap to do the thing that you really want to do. Please do not let this opportunity pass you by.
Fabulous advice. That was international best-selling author Alka Joshi giving her best advice to hundreds of women at the Forbes and Know Your Value 30-50 Summit in Abu Dhabi just a few weeks ago. Alka, who was honored on our 50 over 50 list in 2023, published her debut novel, at the age of 62. That book, The Henna Artist, immediately became a New York Times bestseller and was translated into, count them, 29 languages. Today, she's out with her fourth novel, 6 Days in Bombay, which takes readers around the world to uncover the mystery behind a famous painter's death. And Alka Joshi joins us now, also with us for the conversation, the editor of Forbes Women, Maggie McGrath. Great to have you both with us. So Alka, what I love about this, many things I love about it, especially when you started this whole novel career. But this book is a tribute to many extraordinary women who might have been overlooked by history. That happens a lot. Tell us the inspiration behind 6 Days in Bombay.
When I was researching the first novel, The Henna Artist, I ran across a woman's name, Amrita Shergill. She was an artist whose father was an Indian aristocrat. Her mother was a Hungarian opera singer, and she was extraordinary. She was a prodigy. Her parents spared no expense in getting her painting tutors all throughout Europe and in India, and she was very comfortable with both identities. But even though she was very, flamboyant, she was lively, she was vivacious, she was promiscuous, at the age of 28, she shows up at a hospital in Bombay, in India, and she ends up 2 days later slipping into a coma.
Okay. So anyway, so that was Morning Joe thing. You guys can find it. You guys can watch the whole thing. That was an incredible experience. I think now what we're going to do is sign books in case you guys have brought your books, or you are welcome to also purchase books from our local bookstore here. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you have over here, but I thank you so much for being here today.